you if you're joining us. It is going live now. And welcome. I like the suspense in that You can hear me good, right? So,
yes.
Nice. We have one person also watching now. Good. Welcome. If you're tuned in, just tell us where are you tuning in from? This is like a talk show. All right, welcome. So welcome to the show today. We're glad you've tuned in. So today we're going to have a very wonderful show. We have our guest Sam Kariu, and I'll just start of course with the housekeeping. First, welcome to the show. I think we've been gone for 2 weeks. We were to have our show last week. We were to host Jason, but due to unavailable circumstances, we had to move his episode to April on 11th. So if you are waiting for that, the wait is not going to be longer than that. Soon, 11th will be here. Looking forward to seeing you there. But today we have a very wonderful guest, a friend of mine, Sam Kariu. Actually, no, I used to call him Sam Kariu, but now there's I know about a little bit about Kikuyu, so it is Kareo, right? Kareo.
Yeah.
Kareo.
Yeah.
So it's the Kariu.
It would be, I guess the I would be sort of pronounced as E, but any is fine actually.
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
So on my head, there's a translation in my local. Your name is translated as Wamalwa. You better have someone. That's good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, good. So, but before we go into our today's show, first things always, if you're watching us from LinkedIn, please you can go to our YouTube and just subscribe so that you like to build a subscription on YouTube. So please come in and subscribe. We are really going up. We are looking to cross the 512 subscription mark. We did cross that. So thanks so much for that. And now we are steadily marching towards 1024. So that's like our number that we've been looking for, the magic number. So 1024, as I said, once we get to 1024, you'll never say me ever. Maybe it will be Habbes or someone else, but me, I'll never say like, hey, subscribe. I'll just leave it so that it'll be up to anyone who thinks it's a good content to subscribe. But for now, we really like your subscription so that the algorithm can keep pushing our channel upwards on the recommended channels. Yeah. So that's it. And of course, I'm joined by my co-host Habbes or Clement Habinshuti. Yeah, if you would like to know a little bit more about him, you can check episode 6. It was 6, right? Habbes, right? 6 was
I think 5.
5. 6 was Japheth, and then you 5. Yeah. So check out episode 5. Be live. We went deep into like what it's all about. But as I always say, he's an accomplished. I don't know. Last time I used what word? Critically acclaimed musician. So, but also software engineer. So both musician X or software engineer. So welcome, and now to my guest Sam Kariu. As you heard, is Sam Kariu. He's software engineer for many years. So it's interesting. Most times I've just been bringing up my friends on this show, but I like also maybe over time I'll start spreading to other people who are like my acquaintances. But for now, this is a friend of mine for quite some time. I think we met in campus. First time I think I came across like his work was when I was in campus. I was organizing this GDG events, and there was this competition of Google developer groups competition that was to do with the app. Was it app engine or Google App Engine?
It was like, I think it, yeah, wasn't it like Chrome?
Oh,
Apps?
Google App, yeah, Chrome apps, yeah, yes, and
Chrome apps, yeah.
Chrome apps. And actually, so I was joking with him the other weekend when we met. Like, he built Spotify before there was Spotify. He was there's a tool they built called Nandaa. Basically, it will scrape through your Google Drive, right, and get your music MP3s, and then you can like playlists there. So you stream your own music, basically like stream your own streaming platform. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about it. But it's still that Tunebanda. It's not random, but that still have the name, right? Tunebanda.com.
Yeah. It's still there.
Yeah, good. So, but he's been a software engineer first with he was worked in IBM, then he worked with Microsoft, and now he's with a company called Canary Technologies based in the US, but he works remotely from Nairobi. So, but welcome to the show, Sam. And also, he's a bona fide member of a community we are building called PTC, Perfecting the Craft. One of the first 16 members. so
yeah.
Welcome. So, Sam, just a quick one. You can just introduce yourself, like a little bit about yourself and who you are. I've already said, but maybe just something that I left out before we go to talking about your story.
Okay. No, I think you covered it. Yeah, my name is Sam. I have been working in software for a number of years. So yeah, I guess we can go into the story after this, but I think you covered it. Glad to be here as well with you and Clement. So yeah, very honored to be on episode 9. Just after the 8th. So I'm starting a new whole sequence, 9 to 16.
Bite, yeah. So good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, so to your story, like so for on this show, we like just like other than giving maybe our whole life history, we like going to mainly your journey to computing, like how you got what was the first thing that sparked you. When did you first ever hear about a computer, and how did you get like they're just tracing that journey up to when you started doing up to your first Hello World?
Yeah, so let me see. The first computer, of course, we had like an old one at home, and I don't think it even worked. But this was before even people had computers. This was before computers were widespread, because like then I think we are in that age, probably myself and Nandaa, where we grew up in the pre-digital age. For a number of years, we were in the Stone Age. Then we, all of a sudden, one day, everyone had a computer and a phone. So I think in that period, I think even at school, we got computers. And I got, like, my first computer after I left school was like a Toshiba. It was a really cheap Toshiba, like less than 20K. I don't know how I even got it. I think it's interesting. I'll look up what model that was. But anyway, I got interested in programming once I got to university. Then the first, I don't think I was even interested in the theoretical one, because I was a CS person. So outside of the school environment, I got interested in things like Java and mobile programming. I guess at the time that was Symbian. That was Symbian or something. It was a very restricted sort of environment, but also C++. I think at the time Samsung didn't have Android. So I remember they had some other OS called Bada. That was before Samsung adopted Android. They had their own OS at the time. So we used to play around in those environments. I remember doing a lot of mobile apps. One of the first I did was like this translation thing. There was a translation app I did for Samsung and Symbian Nokia phones. And then I used to go around and sort of, there was a lot of like hackathons and stuff like I used to go to. So I got to know a lot of people from that. And I guess one of them, I happened to meet Nandaa there, coincidentally. But that was a different one. That was the Google one we were talking about. But I used to do a lot of those hackathons. I used to do a lot of those competitions. That was very interesting to me at the time. And we used to get like very nice incentives to do that. But that was still when I was still at school. But what happened is, even by the time I was still studying, I got sort of a job as an engineer somewhere. I think this was like at a company. Oh, before that, something interesting that happened was myself and someone else, a friend of mine, who actually used to work at the CS department. We did this app and we took it to a competition called Pivot. I don't know whether Nandaa, you remember Pivot. It was
Pivot
like
Pivot 20, something.
25, you remember it? Yeah, I remember that. That was really interesting because we almost won. And there were so many interesting ideas. So later on, I actually finished school, got a job. I worked for IBM. It was really interesting. I was there 2 years. We mostly did a lot of enterprise work, especially, but we used to work for telecommunications. So we used to provide services for Airtel Africa. So it was a really intensive job. We used to make applications that were being accessed like by 1 million people at any point in time. So yeah, it was a big learning experience, and working in Java, Oracle, all that enterprise software work was very intensive. And then after that I joined some startup. I joined a very small startup at the time. That was Trigger Foods. I was the first person on the ground, the first engineer. So when I joined, we didn't even have an office. We used to be in a co-working space. So we were just a few of us, the CEO, those executives, and just a few other people. And then it grew. Over time, it grew to a bigger company. But I left after a while, just to start my own thing. So I sort of became an entrepreneur alongside other people, and we created an app, a mobile lending app. At the time, it wasn't a widespread thing. We were one of the first apps on the market, and sort of picked up. So it's more or less fintech. So that was around 2017 to 20. Yeah, like for 2 years. But then we still stuck with that fintech space. We built some other stuff, especially for banks and other financial service providers. So yeah, we were there for a while, but then we closed up shop. So I can go into detail on all of that, but a lot of work, a lot of startup stuff in Kenya is also pretty challenging. I think that I'll come back at a later episode just to go into that. But yeah, for today I'll just go through my story. So I actually, it was actually a really interesting point or time to be in tech, because now tech was really picking up. Because you remember back when even I chose to do CS, because I chose to do it. I wasn't forced by the government. I wasn't forced by JAB to do computer science. I chose to do it. So I, at that time, like it wasn't something people understood, right? If you are doing computer science, actually people just ask you, why are you doing that? Like what is the career after that? What is the plan? Because there wasn't any. So it was mostly people who are either in between mathematics or statistics. It was just a branch of that. So, but after a few years, you are now starting to see it picking up, especially for people who go into programming. But there was also other careers. It wasn't just software. There was other careers associated to computers, and yeah, that's interesting to see till to date. I'll go into also what I think about careers in this tech sector. I'll just skip that for now. So anyway, back to where I was. I joined Microsoft in 2020 during COVID. It was very interesting. I got to meet of course, all you guys who are there, Clement, Nandaa, so many other people. But I remember I only met the guys I was working with once. My team who I was working with, we were working remotely. It was a very weird period. Of course, you guys remember. So we never, like me, I only met those guys once. in face to face, but we were working with each other every day. So Microsoft was good, very good, very smart people there. So I then after that joined another startup. Again, first person there, first engineer. I helped them create a product for more or less they were mostly enterprise focused. Yeah, and then that brings me to where I am today, where I work remotely. Yeah, it's been nearly 10 years. So there's a whole decade that's gone by.
Yeah, good stuff. And now to just have thanks for taking us through your brief sum. I know like you've really abbreviated everything. There's so many like stories in every of those, but a lot of time we just. But you mentioned that you like to talk a little bit about the career, so I've noted it down. We'll come back to it as we close. Yeah, but to our main session today, because every time we meet today, every time we talk, always has been about just that knack for fundamentals, getting to understand the fundamentals of how everything works, as opposed to just being official and all that. So I would like you to just talk a little bit about it, like why is it important for a software engineer to know their fundamentals, and just even looking at your history and how you just reflecting back to your journey, how has that been important to you?
So I never used to on the fundamentals. I never used to really think they were a big deal until recently, which is funny. But it's true. You see, like as you continue along your career, you sort of start looking back and you're like, well, that thing was important there. This other thing was important. This thing was important. This thing was not important. So one thing I've noticed was all this time we've been, now I'm going to sort of talk generally. All this time, and I'm going to also sort of mention a lot about the Kenyan space specifically, because that's what I'm interested about. So if you look at how we work with software in Kenya, it's we are very good in software. We have good people in tech. We have engineers, product people, entrepreneurs. We have a whole ecosystem. But also, if you look at it critically, there's one thing that's missing, which is that technical aspect of it, where if you ask yourself, have we really advanced the field of computing? If you say, like, if you are honest, the answer is no, you haven't advanced. But I'm going to touch on that, because that's just the basis of what I mean by fundamental. So let's go back to you working as a software engineer, or you working as a product person, etc. So if you're working day to day, you are expected to be very good at the business aspect of where you work. So whatever product you're working on or software, you are sort of expected to know that very deeply. But in terms of fundamentals, I've seen, like, no one expects you to know a lot about computing, right? No one expects you to know much beyond providing value there. So it's very easy for you as a software engineer to never even go very deeply into some of these things. it's very easy for you to go for me 1 decade without ever thinking, like, how does a computer work, by the way? How does any of this stuff work? So and that's like a symptom of the type of work we do. But it's fine. It's fine because that's where we are at in the stage of computing. It's not unique to Kenya. If you pick someone in the US or somewhere else, they're probably the same. But one thing that you'll notice is some of these things also affect the evolution of tech, especially in Kenya, because we are not at the stage other people are. If you look at in the US, there are people like us who are software engineers, but there are also people who are researching or they are doing other stuff. And those people are the people who are dictating where tech is going to, right? So they are the ones who dictate. I would say dictate, but they don't dictate. That's how euphemism. They are the ones who are influencing where tech goes to. If you look at the cutting edge, maybe that's right now. Maybe that's AI. AI was not made by software people like me or Clement or Nandaa. It came from somewhere else, and that somewhere else is that place we don't have here, right? So there's something that's missing, and I'm always telling Nandaa that whenever we are talking. So sometimes I think it's up to some of us to also pick up that missing piece, in whatever way we are able to. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to be a genius or anything. Just sometimes it might need you to also go deeper into the basics or the fundamentals, right? So that's what we mean by getting back to the fundamentals. It mostly we might not help you at your job, but it might advance something else somewhere else. And we're at the stage now where we, as people here in Africa, we are just forced to watch some of these things happen, right? We're forced to see. We're just spectators, right? You're just spectating as things happen, which should not be the case, because I believe there are so many of us who have that ability to also advance the field. It's just that we don't have that. Probably that interest is not. There's no incentive. There's no incentive to do things. You just rather do another job. Literally, some people are not even in. Some of them are not even in software. You're doing other things. So,
and
I'm very big on that.
To just interrupt that. Sorry for interruption, but you mentioned like there's no incentive. But do you think there is actually more incentive towards veering way away from the fundamentals? Like you'll earn way better, or you'll advance even faster by just being pragmatic and practically applying stuff like get this library, get this framework, even don't care about how it was built, even who built it. You just get it from whatever place it is, and then you apply it, you use it, you get paid, you're good. And actually it's sort of like okay, it works. And even it's better to maintain software that it's even maintainable to work with frameworks that are already established, because it means even that code base you'll be able to sort of hand it down to anyone. If you're building with this framework, someone will just know, okay, just pick up from where you left, as opposed to if you were to do things on your own, like from scratch. So maybe someone might have that argument about the other part. Like it seems to work for many people. not knowing fundamentals, not caring about the fundamentals seem to work and you're okay. How would you say about it?
Yeah, it doesn't. There's no incentive to do it. As I said, I mostly worked all those years without really needing to know much of that, and you don't need to know. And even I would say for the vast majority of people, it's fine not knowing. But it's also like a challenge to a few. There's a number of people who have the ability to sort of not just stay at that level. Because if you look at all of history, some of these things are just a few people are the ones who sort of drive that this advancement. If you look at even whatever physics, there's only Einstein was only one guy since he was gone. Hasn't been another Einstein, and so on and so forth, or Isaac Newton. So there could be like an Isaac Newton here in Kenya who is just maybe it's Clement working at Microsoft, but he has no incentive to develop, to advance, right? Or maybe he's very discouraged from doing that for whatever reason. Because even one big problem is we come from a society where we have a lot of problems. So someone who is right now working at a stable job in Kenya, and someone working at another job, you yourself working at a big company, you have colleagues in other countries, right? So you guys probably, you don't earn the same, but you earn pretty similar incomes with regard to the country you're from, comparatively. But if you look at you yourself in Kenya, you probably have so many people depending on you in your community. You'll be doing like Habbes or something. You're raising for your church, for your so many things, which someone else in another country wouldn't be doing. Probably first world or whatever high income country. So that's one of the challenges we have. It's also hard for someone to do that. So the thing here is there's little incentive. Maybe in future the thing is for the government to step in. I was telling Nandaa, in other countries like China, it's sometimes you find the government stepping in and sort of forcing people to do certain things so that at least their technology advances. Like in China, like they had to sort of force that what was it? The chip industry to develop so that they are not so dependent on the US, which works out well for them. So maybe it's the same thing here in Kenya as well.
I see. So actually, I think you mentioned that, like when talking about even sponsoring students to go, like at least go in those cutting edge research. So they will sponsor maybe a student to go to Stanford. But those universities really, if you're not getting a scholarship, they're really expensive for an individual to even pay for themselves. And even getting in first, you have to also pass some tests and all that. So by the government, I have not seen any like active involvement of the government saying, okay, we would like to focus on this. So it's been more about folks earning money and getting, like, at least, of course, they're dealing with the unemployment issue right now, which is like the urgent one, but also it's better also to do some forward thinking, because even as you've seen that Africa will actually be in the next decade or 20 years to come, Africa will be one of the most like either the most populous continent. So this is where like everyone will be looking for to get like human resource. But if you're just preparing ourselves to be users of stuff, we'll not have a cutting edge over the rest. So I think if you're strategic on that, I think it's possible to do it. Yeah, but also at individual levels, I think we can be able to try and do our best at individual levels. But of course, at the government level, it's easier, it's better scale. You can reach out to more people. But yeah, we'll see. And now back to these fundamentals. Do you think for self-taught programmer, I meet so many people who are like getting into this software industry, or even around AI, the people who are like, oh, I would like to get into software. Maybe I start doing ML and stuff. So what would you advise a self-taught programmer in terms of fundamentals? And do you have any listing of the things that you think these are the non-negotiable, the bare minimums that you need to know and then build up from? Or do you have any places you can guide people to go to?
So I'm far from being an expert, but I can tell you about self-taught, because most of us even are self-taught. That's just the truth. I don't think even like that's okay. The thing is, even if we were taught, some of us were taught some of these things, but we never really connected them until very later on in life is when you get to see like what you learned is actually being applied. But I would say the thing with starting out as in software or programming is that there's so much going on at that time. At that point, you are starting out. At that point, you are starting out. There's a lot that is going on. So I am actually of the opinion it's better not to start learning some of these things at that point. If you are on the one learning to like have like a hello world in Node.js or Python or something, that's not the point where you start learning about about all these things. So you at that point, I would just say it's better to see progress rather than go into theory. But as you go on, as you start becoming like 1 year or 2 years, 3 years, it's important now to start sort of looking back and saying, start looking into how things work. So I guess the simplest thing is to start looking into the open source side. So if you are a front-end person, let's say you're a front-end person and you work in, let's say, React or something like that, then it's good to sort of see how React works. Why? Okay, even the first question is, why do you even need React? What does even React do for you? Because that's an important question that I found myself asking, wait, how does the computer work? So like that's how you start asking like questions. Start from what you're working with. If it's like that React or that Django or that whatever you're using, it's good to investigate. Of course, you don't need to know all of it, but the basics are good. So as a self-taught person, you start seeing that there are patterns to a lot of things. The time you get to see React working, or you get to see that library or framework, how it works, the next time you work with something else, you'll find that it's just the same thing. The same principles are applied. Because you'll find in a lot of these softwares, there are no new things, there are no new concepts. People are just rewinding ideas. They rewind ideas literally. It's so it's very repetitive. So even if you go to AI, actually now the thing is there's a point where it sort of starts to branch off, because I think in AI it's a bit different, but it's only because it's very new. But once again, there's no AI expert in the world. Let's just be clear. There is no one who knows how AI is working, because it's a black box. So you're not if you don't understand, you're not alone. There's no one who can tell you why this thing works. So people they're just throwing things in the box and then seeing what is coming out. But anyway, back to the point of that fundamentals. They're not hard. You could choose to, if you're a book person, you could buy books. I know Nandaa is a book. I see books behind him. He's a book person. There are people who do videos. I would how I do it personally, I just repeat things. I usually go through I do a lot of Wikipedia. Wikipedia is good enough for most of these things. There's no one who's going to a technical article on Wikipedia and putting lies. So it's good enough for me. Or if you want to go deeper, there are books. And I usually just, every few months, I just go back to what I read. Because you have a tendency of forgetting. So I usually like to be repetitive, and just go back and try and do it again. But it does help. It does help you to connect things. It does help you to connect certain concepts. Most of them will not be at your day job, but some of them will be related to what your some problems you encounter at work. But yes, not mostly not. It won't be at your job.
And by that, someone has asked that what do you mean by no one knows how AI works?
Oh, okay. Let me elaborate. The AI I meant was neural networks, right? Neural networks are a technique in AI. They are not recent. They came about 20 or 30 years ago. I think the people who did it 30 years ago, it was just a paper, and then the technology that existed was not enough to make it practical. But then recently, the advances in chip technology have made neural networks a possibility. But the way they work is that they are hidden. They are hidden layers. They are nodes, right? Those networks have nodes within them. So it's reverse engineering. We are reverse engineering. We are taking input and a result that we know. That's what training data is. So we are training on data that we already know. We get the input and the output. We feed it into those networks. And then those networks configure themselves in such a way that they map to that data you give them. So they sort of mirror how your brain works, because your brain is a set of neural networks. So even in your brain has parts that are configured. As you continue learning, from the time you are born, those nodes or those networks in your brain are not configured. But as someone teaches you how to walk, how to talk, those networks start to realign. Those parts start to form. Some of them will never change, but some of them will change in certain ways as you continue learning. That's why as you continue growing older, you become stagnant. As you reach a certain age, there's an age you reach where you are unteachable. You cannot learn because your networks have already solidified and they cannot reform paths. So in the same way, artificial neural networks, ANN, work in the same way. But the long and short is we don't know how. If you ask someone why do those paths do that, how do they know how to form paths? Or if you ask yourself why those artificial neural networks are working in the same way as the brain, no one can tell you that. So it's just something we stumbled upon. We thought to ourselves, if we create this thing in the way this thing works, maybe, and then someone got lucky and it worked like that. So that's what I'm saying. There's no expert. There's no person who knows the why of that works. But once again, it just means there's an opportunity to discover more. That's why, funny enough, if one of the big problems in AI will be finding out who is an AI and who is a real person, right? I guess that's the big problem. If someone, like I was saying the other day, someone was saying Elon Musk told someone on Twitter that it's very hard to know who is a bot and who is not a bot. But when he came in, he thought it was really easy, but then he stayed there for a while and he was like, this is so hard. So it's the same thing. So I hope I've answered that person's question.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Clement, any additions, any comments or questions?
Yeah, so I think I found like the things you mentioned about moving the industry forward very insightful. And you also talked about incentives, and you mentioned that maybe even the government could step in. I think maybe in advanced, let's say, economies, if I may call them that, like research is has been the backbone of their advancements for generations. Like it's not. I think they've developed that culture, like of research. Like researchers are well regarded in the society. Like someone was telling me, like you go in Europe, like streets are named after researchers, or towns or things are named after researchers or inventors. Academia has matured for centuries. Like you can have like a fruitful career as an academic, and also industry also like rewards researchers, especially like in these cutting edge companies, whether it's in tech, whether it's in like the petroleum industries. Like they're looking for these researchers to do this, like to just because it gives them a competitive edge. So I think maybe one thing here that could help is if also we had that level of competition as an industry, such that for you to have an edge over your competitors, you really need to be experimenting and figuring out the next step. But I also think because there's things that maybe at an industry or policy level that could help foster this, let's say, spirit of research or advancing the field forward. But I also think like at the individual levels, there are things we can do, and you spotted a challenge. I think maybe some of the things that I think could help is being a bit of having some level of delusion, thinking like, why not me? Like, let's say if you stumble upon a problem and you're not sure what the solution is, the idea is if that problem is solvable, someone out there can solve it. And if that's someone out there can do it, why not me? Why not maybe just have that spirit of let me attack this problem even if I don't know the solution, or having this problem that you're passionate about that you just attacking day by day, like finding out like that forces you to go through, like even if it's not necessarily something that has an obvious economic output, even just that idea of attacking that difficult problem that forces you to like do research, read the literature, what other people have done, where did they get to, what are the flaws or the limitations of their approaches, how can I reproduce their results, can I tweak this a bit and see what happens. I think that's the process like that researchers go through, that experimentation, trying different things out, exploring different paths. I think maybe that's like a practice that as an individual, you can foster without even waiting for external incentives like the industrial job, and maybe in that process you can come up with something. I think there are also like problems that even when you mentioned about the AI, one of the current concerns about the AI is accessibility of the AI research, because it's very expensive, such that only people who have a lot of money, a lot of processing power, a lot of compute can participate in the cutting edge research. So I think as a continent, because we are, so to speak, the least resourced in that regard, there's actually a huge incentive for us to figure out ways to participate or to develop AI that does not require as much compute power or as much resources. So that could be that's like an open question that even researchers around the world are trying to figure out, how can we make AI that is effective but cheap to train, cheap to do inference on, so that I feel like that's like an open area that people in Kenya or in Africa can say, okay, we may not have as much access to these like $1 million GPU clusters. So can we find an alternative way of training or of achieving similar or good enough results with a fraction of the cost? So I don't think we need to wait for Google or Microsoft to come up with the answer. Like, even we can start thinking about that, be part of the people looking for those solutions. We don't have to wait for someone to give us a paper and then you can say, okay, this can be done. Like, what are we doing about that? So that's where I see it, like there are things that we can also do as individuals to kind of contribute to the advancement of the field without having to wait for like external forces, because we are kind of like bootstrapping. So once you bootstrap, then the government, the industry, academia, like these structures will follow once there's some seed, but this seed does not have to start from outside. That's the way I just wanted to comment on that.
That's true. Because then that was my point, because anyway, like the first people who discovered things, they were not incentivized by the government, right? So whoever was all those guys in the past, that just happened because they created that momentum. What you're saying is like they created that momentum for research. The first researchers were like considered like mad people, like they were crazy, right? And now, but then we are seeing like now we are at that point where we also need to get into that. We sort of need to get into the aspect of creating all this IP, because the problem is like we don't have that IP in Africa. That's, as long as we don't have that, like it's very hard to be independent of other people. That's just the reality on the ground. And now we are moving into a world. By the way, we've been living in a very good world of open source software and democratized software. But now we are moving into a world of now closed systems that people are owning. If we move into AI, you've already said it, like AI is all about the data. You can see the ChatGPT have like that company behind it has spent a lot of money acquiring those data sets. And now it's sort of like that snowball effect where they'll continue growing and becoming bigger and owning the data sets and owning bigger data sets, while everyone else just is standing back. So we are moving into a world where like the barrier to entry is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. But if I sort of propose a solution, if I was to create an AI that doesn't require maybe data sets, that's just a hypothetical. Maybe that sounds crazy. But imagine if I was to do that and I sort of have that, I will instantly make their business worthless overnight. So that's just an example of what research can do. You might tell me that's impossible, like that's crazy, but that's what researching and and creating things is about. It's about finding out whether something is possible and trying to do it, and maybe even succeeding. Oh, Nandaa, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, but talking of this course, I'm just like, there's conspiracy theories part of me just think like it's someone maybe just hiking some prices here to, because once democratize something, it becomes now we have many competitors. We have so right now we can name the companies that are like controlling the AI narrative and everything. And let's say, for example, at the chip level, it's maybe just one company, right? So
yeah.
So yeah, but I think we'll get to know exactly maybe in few years' time, because I'm sure there's always be someone else who come up with competition. And actually, Daniel had mentioned that there's a company called Darwin that Apple acquired that was trying to do some, I think, low cost sort of GPUs or something. When we're talking about that conversation, so
I've heard of them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, Darwin, actually, Darwin, that's where when you look at your chips, the Mac M1s, there's usually the Darwin. It's actually like one of the architectures, I think. The Darwin. Darwin. You are doing emulation, or okay, guys, go check it out. It's an interesting thing to look at. Yeah, but always as you always do, this thing, time flies always like nothing. And I have one more question for you, but I'll skip that. Also about reflection, just looking back at your younger self, but I'll go right to our closing question. And but the guys who are online, thank you so much for joining in. And a few questions that there was Creative Edge who asked so many other questions that are off topic, but it was okay. Even ahead and even self-confessed. But now you see, if you confess to me, you're putting a burden of proof on me. When they look for me, they'll say there's someone who said whatever you said on chat, but it's all good. But thanks so much for the questions. I've asked you to just email me, and I'm gonna get back to you. But thanks so much for joining in and also participating in the chat. So that was good. So, but your last question, Sam, on your what you call everyday carries for a software engineer. Like, what is your everyday carry? Like stuff that you never leave behind, whether it's software or physical stuff.
Sorry, I think I missed that question, and just
like, what are your essential everyday carries for, like, either it's software or hard or physical stuff that you have by yourself every day, like as a software engineer?
Carries. An example. I might still, yeah.
Like, your usual tools of trade that
my
you
tools.
Always have.
My tools of trade.
Like, actually, you always say there are many, of course, but what are your top 3?
Okay. Well, these days it's a MacBook. I used to be anti-MacBook, but I just had to admit that it's the best for development. But I still have my Linux machine somewhere, a Lenovo, but it's unfortunate. Unfortunately, Ubuntu has failed us. But my MacBook is here. That's my number one. I don't really need much except for that. I have hardware like my monitor and my headphones. Those would be my top 3. If I have those, I'm good. I don't even.
On the software side.
On the software side, what do I use? Honestly, the terminal is my choice of terminal would be the thing that I look at most, because that's where I spend a lot of time. I have something called Terminator. That was on Ubuntu though. On the thing with Mac is everything is there. Like, everything is optimized. So I have the Mac terminal or that Terminator software on Ubuntu. That was very good. I have for my database, I like using something called the Beaver. My friend Ken was the one who told me about the Beaver. Let me DBEAVER. That helps me connect to a data. It's open source. That's a really nice thing. It's free, so that's why I like it. But except for those, essentially I use just the shell. I'm a shell person, so I don't have like very special software I use or special tools. Curl, I guess, is a big thing for testing. I use Postman sometimes to test things, but that's it.
Your ID of choice?
Of course, that would of course be VS Code. I'm not sure. Do people use any other IDE these days? Except
but
VS Code?
There's one that someone told me about. I'm yet to check it out. It's only supported on Mac now. Z.dev.
Oh, really? Okay.
Fast. It's like he said, it's really fast. So someone gave me that plug. I'm yet to check it out. It looks like, of course, VS Code, because of that Chromium stuff, I guess it gets a bit slow. It eats a little bit of your RAM, but I'm yet to check out Z. Look like Z is a promising one.
You know what? I look at it. We used to have Sublime. I don't know why we all shifted from that.
No one really liked it. Nice.
Yeah, one day we just woke up and everyone was like, "No, we're not using this."
Maybe that charging and being cross source.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That pop-up used to ignore to buy it.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
Good stuff. So thanks so much. As we close, I would like just to shout out to our producer who is always on the background, Maryann. So thanks so much for the work that you do for us, and thank you everyone who joined in. Remember to share this with the rest of your friends and family, and keep subscribing. And see you on the next one. Thank you so much. All right.